Hi, I'm Daniel Greene, and I'm excited to host another interview in this energy healing and manifesting series for the Empower You Facebook group. Today, we bring you a psychic, medium, healer, teacher, having run his own spiritual development groups. He's a clinical hypnotist, NLP practitioner, certified in the Havening technique, no less, and a close friend of mine. It's my pleasure to introduce you to Barry Gray from better-living.com. Hi, mate, and thank you for joining us. It's great to finally have you here.
Hey, mate. Thank you very much. Thanks for the time.
Okay, likewise. I just want to jump right into this interview. You've got quite a repertoire there, and not least being psychic at the helm of it all. And I'm sure all those watching would love a bit of background about how we discovered you were psychic and how we got to doing this work. So over to you, my friend.
Wow. I think, to be fair, it's a quite a long story. It's quite a painful one as well, in a lot of ways. I've always known, probably since childhood, but I was kind of repressed a lot. By my parents, it wasn't really accepted. You know, talking to yourself or having secret friends or you know how it is, having friends that don't really exist. My old man came from a really strong military background where it certainly wasn't accepted. His lifestyle didn't afford it, in the fact that he came from broken family. He was in and out of borsals and foster cares back in the 60s and 70s, you know, so he was a really hard man.
Yeah.
And looking back now, I can really understand where he was coming from a point of view that, I suppose, in his environment, the weak didn't really survive. So if anything that was sort of different, they'd have been picked on. So I can see where it's coming from in a lot of ways, and for that I'm very thankful. But so I kind of got a lot of visions. I thought it was a lot of imagination. I was quite creative as a child, and I think my first real instance when I realised that something had gone on was in about, 1986. My parents were getting divorced, and I knew as soon as I walked in the front room, I knew what was coming out of their mouths. We're splitting up, we're getting divorced. You're moving back to the northeast of England, and your old man's moving to Salisbury Plain. And my life changed quite quickly after that. I spent a lot of time with my mum. Lived up in the northeast. She met a guy, and instantaneously, the first time I ever met him, when he walked home from work, as he was leaving the house and closed the door, I said, "Mum, you're going to marry him." She said, "Don't be ridiculous, I've just met him." So you're going to marry him. And in August 1993, they got married. So that was my first kind of prediction that came true.
Yes.
Which was, and then I was drawn to spiritualist churches, not because, by accident more than anything. We went in, I come from quite a poor background. Mum had no money. So we went in there, mate, to get out the rain, basically. You know, we're knocking around with your mates, go out to get out the rain. And every time I went in, the guy accompanied us at the end and said, "You're not going to be doing this one day when you're old." And I was like, "Yeah, man, whatever, do one, mister." You know, it's like, there's no way I'm doing that. And I'd leave, and we'd go back a couple of months later, hoping that he wouldn't recognise who we were because it was raining, you know. And he'd come in and say, "You're back again, son, here. You'll be doing this one day." No, it won't. And it kind of got put to bed. And I went and joined the army. I was forced into it because of finance. My parents couldn't afford for me to go to university or anything. So it was in the town that I come from. There's not a lot of opportunity. And the army was probably the best thing for me. I went to be a surveyor. It didn't really work out. But it's an absolute brutal environment, the military. Absolutely brutal. You know, make no bones about it. You know, only the strongest survive, and you can be made or broken in minutes, you know, from 1st Turkey Battalion. And being very intuitive, it enabled me to pick up a room very quickly, or pick up in, you know, the attitude of other people around me, the stronger guys, you know, and you end up being a certain way. So the lessons that my old man taught me previously kind of helped me and still me in good stead. And probably about 1998, I got married to a girl, and I knew she was up to no good. I just couldn't prove it. Right. I knew she was no good. I could feel it. I knew. I could see it. I could see what was going on. It was transpiring in front of me. But I couldn't see, if you see what I mean, physically with my own eyes. I just knew I could pick people out of a crowd. I knew who she was playing around with. And we split up. And then I started having these really, really, really powerful dreams. They're like basically premonitions. You know, I was dreaming of things, and then the following week, month, 6 months later, it was there in front of me. It would actually be apparent. I mean, a great example is that I dreamt of this African man on a wall in this person's house. And when I went to their house, she'd pulled the wallpaper off the wall, and it had been the shape of this African man. And I mean, mate, I panicked. Do you know what I mean? I was like, oh shit. And I left. It freaked me out, as you can well imagine. And but I continued my military career, and I left in sort of 2005. After having all these sort of dramas with people, with feeling things, my relationships collapsing and falling around me, but not really having any great understanding of why, and struggling with relationships with my family for very similar reasons. Never really fitting in, because I was always quite defensive, because I felt I was feeling a lot of different things. You know what I mean? Like, you know, a lot of energy coming my way that like and dislike, different, when people are upset with you, you know, it was quite painful. And so I kind of went on a bit of a role of self-destruction, if I'm honest. I left the military trying to find myself, and went out to the Middle East to, I suppose, basically find who I was. And spent sort of a number of years doing hostile close protection, worked in London. And it wasn't until I was involved in an incident in 2008 that it was quite serious, and I got quite badly hurt, that I came home, and it was as though someone just turned a light switch on, is the best way of explaining it. I went from kind of having all these feelings and knowing things to being able to see things pretty clearly. I mean, I was sat with a friend of mine watching a DVD, and I turned to him and I says, well, I'm not going to tell you what I said, but it was pretty, he'd never told anybody. And I just gave him sort of a 20-minute speech about what had gone in his life, and why he didn't have food in the cupboards, and why all this sort of stuff. And he just turned, he started crying, and said, how do you know that? I don't know. It was kind of the answer, kind of how it went down. And it was kind of, I listened, and I'd always done really well with girls, but I never really knew why. And then things started to fall in place. And then I got back in touch with Haley, who's my wife now, who, you know, has been pretty supportive. Pretty supportive of this whole journey. And when we bought this house, as I walked in the front room, there was stood the guy who was on my left-hand shoulder in full, almost, it's very hard to explain, to describe, probably translucent like the Predator, but Sitting Bull, who's up there. Yes. He was stood in my living room. And it's kind of like a moment where, obviously, you can't forget it. You know, I wasn't scared, I wasn't anything, but it was, oh my God, it's time to start taking notice. You know, obviously, you know, this is a big thing. And I went off to work for a Russian guy living in London for a bit. And I was sat there in the garden, and just minding my own business, just sat there chilling out, waiting. You know, he was out doing what he was doing, and I was just looking after the house. And I started getting all these visions in my head about my mum, you know, and about she was just been diagnosed, well, she'd just been taken to hospital with a potential blood clot. And I rang her and said it's not. And I told her what it was, give her a full reading about what was going to happen to her life over the next 6 months, or, you know, how it was going to end for her, because I just told her she was diagnosed with terminal cancer, basically, and what her treatment was going to be going forward. And it was still in trial at the time, so it hadn't even been announced that was a treatment for it. It was like a contraceptive pill for chemotherapy, you know, to keep the tumour small or contained. I told her exactly where it was, how big it was, the whole ish. I even got down to what she'd be wearing over that 6 month period in her coffin, and I wasn't even there to dress her, so I didn't even know what was going in there. So it was kind of really, really spooky. And I rang some woman up on a psychic line and said, I need your help. Basically, this is what's happening to me, because I'd already been to a spiritualist church who turned me down. And I said, this is what's happened to me all my life. I kind of understand now. I need your help. And she invited me down to a couple of retreats. I did a couple of retreats with her, and I went from knowing little bits to, at the end of the weekend, being able to give someone a full reading. And I had the same feelings I'd had all my life. You know, it was just, I could feel the energy of people not liking what I was giving out because of the hierarchy within spiritualism, or certainly within that group. And I ended up leaving. And then, fortunately, I was put in touch with a very good friend of mine, a guy called Greene.
Oh, bless.
Who kind of helped me on the way for probably about another 6 months to a year, wasn't it? You know,
Yeah,
probably must have been. And then I kind of decided, well, I didn't decide, I was kind of pushed to find my own path, which has been probably the most rewarding experience of all, I think, because you can only find your own answers, can't you? So my take on spiritualism is probably very different to a lot of other people. I don't necessarily believe in the stereotypical guides or mediumship, or, you know, I kind of believe in the one mind. You know, we're all connected. You know, what you give is what you're given. You know, so whatever message comes through, whether people want to believe it's from your Auntie Susan or your grandma or whatever, I'm not necessarily going to say that's exactly what it is. I'm just going to tell you that the insight you're given is what you're given, regardless of how your mind interprets that, or what your mind wants you to believe that's coming from. So for me, if I have some like sitting bull come in, I know I'm going to do something to do with shamanism or some kind of healing thing. You know, if I have someone come in, like someone's grandma, I know that you need whatever you need. And that's the kind of way that spiritualism for me kind of works, that whatever I'm given is what that person receives at the time, or what's needed at the time. And it's kind of really important, because the last couple of days, I've given people readings that were wrong, and I knew they were wrong, but the message behind it was what give that person the kick they needed to achieve what they needed to achieve for the insight, which was really, so it's kind of a different way of working. I was thinking, well, I know that's wrong because I can feel it's wrong, but I'm still going to tell you anyway, because this person were kind of waiting to get a job and not really working to find a job and expecting one to come to them. And they were under a little bit of pressure. So I was sort of told, no, you know, this is what's going to happen. It was kind of the worst case scenario. And within a week, they went out and found themselves a job because they panicked, which was brilliant, because it kind of worked a different way. I was like, oh, wow, you know? So that's kind of how I am and where I am. And I think it's I don't think that it's finished by a long way, the journey, you know, because it can't. It'd be very disappointing if it was. But I think you have to, I wouldn't consider myself as psychic or a medium if I want to label it. People like labels because that's the way the Western world works.
Yeah.
So for that purpose, I am. I'd like to think that I'm working towards, I suppose, spiritual enlightenment at one point, wherever that takes me and however far down that path I go. I'm probably, in the grand scheme of things, about this far down it compared to what it should be or what it is. You know, but there's many paths up a hill, isn't there? You know what I mean? We all get there at the end. So
that's right. It's interesting. You know, you're what I class as a close friend, and I haven't heard all these stories before. So I'm hearing some of these things for the first time, and then some of the stories I've heard, but you've kind of pieced them all together. So I'm joining my own dots up, you know, with regard to your life. So I'm kind of sitting
quite private man. So
yeah, it is interesting. I'm sure people watching this at home are going to be as interested as I am. So, I mean, in your work, what sort of things give you fulfillment? What makes you come alive? You know, what favorite aspects?
Do you know, Danny, when I first started this, I wanted to be the best that I could be.
Yeah.
From an ego point of view, really, if I'm honest, from an ego point of view, you know, probably like, you know, I don't know, look how good I am. You know, look how good I am. And in actual fact, it's not me. You know, it's nothing to do with me. I'm just a conjurer. But what's more important is that whatever information you give across, good, bad, it comes from the right place.
Yeah.
And it hits the right spot, right, with that person. So when someone comes and visits someone, whether they're intuitive, psychic, a medium, hypnotherapist, counselor, whatever it is, you know, healing practitioner, anything, you know, they are normally at quite a low ebb, you know, and they're after some kind of insight, some kind of help. a lot of people come in with, and you can see how the pain in their face, can't you? You know, and I think when you hit the spot, or you tell them what they need to hear, whether it's good or bad, that face softens straight away, and they walk out that room happy or relaxed. Even if they're not happy, they're relaxed. Do you know what I mean? But they've heard something that they need to hear. And I think that's probably the most rewarding thing for me, and the probably thing I enjoy the most. It's obviously always very nice to get something right from a psychic or mediumistic point of view. You know, when you bring someone's mum in, or you know the intention of someone's mum in, and you give them some kind of confirmation that they're all right, and you tell them how they died or whatever. That's always brilliant to do as well. But it's not as fulfilling for me now as what is hitting the right spot with someone and getting that message across to them. You know, like with Danielle the other day at work. You know, and I don't normally come out as being a medium or a psychic or spiritual, as you know, we've discussed this many times.
Yes. Yeah, so it's funny, I can relate as well. I used to want to be the next best thing as a medium. I want to be the best, and it's all bollocks. It really is. If you make it all about you, you're so missing the point, and there'll be limits to what you can bring through. And once you get yourself out of the way, it changes everything, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the hardest things is getting out your own way, you know, and people lose sight of what it's all about. I think sometimes, you know. So one of your biggest challenges been recurring themes in your own journey? I'm sure we all have them. That's been my biggest challenge. My biggest challenge is probably coming out and saying, "I'm Barry Greene, the psychic medium."
Right.
And I don't imagine. It's funny because me and Haley were having a conversation the other day, and I said, Haley, I says, for me to come out as being and I use the word come out, what terminology. So, and I'll come on to that in a second. With my background and the way that, my life was very early on, and my military background, you think I come from quite a strong, strict background in the military, which was just a reinforcement of what I had as a child into the hostile close protection, which is even more sort of, I wouldn't say rigidly disciplined, and there's a lot of discipline there, it's a lot of self-discipline. It's quite a strict, quite a hard environment. To now sort of really untwist myself, because that's what I feel as though I'm doing, to come back to the person I should have, or the person I am when I was, or the spirit I am when I was born, it's quite a difficult challenge. That's certainly one of my hardest things is learning to catch things in the moment, people's behaviours. I find that, because I come from, obviously I like a little bit of NLP and everything's a mirror, so if something's irritating me about someone else, look within, and I kind of find that difficult sometimes to really appreciate that behaviour and look at it at the same time and then let it go, recognise my own behaviour in them. Sometimes I find that quite hard, certainly when you're in the heat of an argument with your wife. It's a very difficult thing to do, but it's getting better. And I think more you do it with the people who are closer to me, or more I do it with people closer to me, the easier it becomes at places like work, and outside. That's quite difficult. Coming out as a psychic, with my background, my friendship groups, it would probably be more accepted I'd probably feel more accepted by coming out and saying something like I was homosexual, than being a psychic medium, So not a lot of people know. However, as I was saying, me and Haley had a conversation the other day, and I was telling Haley about this interview with you and how I'd put it off, and she says, it's quite funny. She says, I've been telling everybody you're psychic for years. What difference does it make?
Really?
Yeah.
Well, everyone knows, mate. It's only you who.
Exactly. I was like, what? She says, I know it's some big secret. She says, I've just been telling everyone. She says, no big deal, is it? I says, you're not bothered. She says, it doesn't affect me. Do you know what I mean? It's just the way it is. And I thought, you are kidding. It's funny, isn't it? Exactly. It's ridiculous how you kind of make this big bubble around you of fear of whatever, because it's my reality. Do you know what I mean? It's what my perception is at that time, my perception of my reality. as opposed to someone else's reality, you know. And sometimes it's probably best to step outside yourself and get out your own way a little bit, you know, because this is probably why I took a break from spiritualism for a year, because I knew for my journey, it's always been kind of, and when I taught a group, it was always about spirit development, personal growth, personal development. You'll always put an obstacle in your own way, and whether you jump that obstacle or not is up to you. It's your choice. So you'll come to a point where when I was taught to use my gift through your group, through the first group I went to, they always tell you always got to talk to trust, and they'll give you a little bit, and when they know that you trust that little bit, they'll give you more and more and more. Yeah. So I use that as a hurdle. So I'll say, you know, when you get to that point of trusting and giving, it will give you some more to go on further. And this is kind of where my blockers become, because I refuse to come out as a psychic, refuse to come out as a medium, refuse to come out as and just say, look, this is who I am, take it or leave it. Do you know what I mean? And acknowledge it. You know, and I'm aware that it was at a point of I either do or this is as far as you go and you lose it, and that's it. You know, this is as far as you get. So it's kind of make or break time, really.
Yes.
It is. So I guess it's out there now. There's no kind of coming back from it.
Yeah, there'll be a few people watching this video, I'm sure, when it's released. We always ask, Barry, people who come on these calls if they have a tip or a technique that they'd like to share, maybe something that's helped you that you think could help our audience. Is anything?
Do you know what's probably been the most rewarding thing for me is I was at a retreat and I had a eureka moment with one guy. I went there, I was there for 48 hours, and in them 48 hours he could have said whatever he wanted, but he came out with one sentence and I was like, oh my God. And it's exactly that, you know, me and you had conversations about Mahatma Gandhi and people like that, and, you know, be the change you want to see the most in the world. Well, his kind of, he came from a way of mastery point of view, you know, what's the other one? Way of mastery. I can't remember what it's called, doesn't matter. And it was very, very religious oriented in the fact that, you know, his statement was, when Jesus was on the cross and that guy, the soldier, was hammering them nails into his hands, he recognized that God, his own anger in the God, his own hatred, his own, you know, love, fear, and all these things. And it wasn't the fact that he brought Jesus into it, it was the fact of what he recognized that hit home with me. Because if I can, at the time, recognize my behavior in somebody else, good and bad,
yes,
then it helps you live a happier, more relaxed life, I think, you know. And for me, that's probably what spirituality is about. It's not about, you know, giving psychic messages as well. It's just a really nice way of living, I think. You know, self-development, you know, I think it really is. It's really it's quite rewarding. It's difficult, really difficult, quite rewarding. So if you can, that's probably a good tip.
I know we were chatting before we started recording this interview this morning, and you hinted that you might have a little treat for our viewers at home. I don't know if is that something you...
Yeah, I might do. I'm thinking about it. Because I've not done it for quite a while, I kind of, my circle of friends get snippets of insight now and again when I choose to. Danny, you've had a few bits and pieces in the past.
Sure.
You know? I plan to offer everyone in the group, it's up to them whether they take it or not, a free reading, just to get the flow back in for myself, to help me out, to get me back on my way. Just get in touch with me on the group on Danny's page, and we'll sort something out over the next couple of weeks.
Wow, you heard it here. I must admit, I just want to share a little anecdote. Barry's given me, in his words, a few bits and pieces that's understating things, but that's typical of you, Barry, understating yourself. But one of the readings that Barry gave me, and it was probably 2 or 3 years ago now or something, and we were sitting having a brew, as we do. And he said, you're going to meet a woman in a supermarket in one of the aisles, and you're going to get chatting, and he told me what she was wearing, what she looked like, her hair, personality traits, and he said, you're going to end up going for a drink with her in the bar that night. And I thought, this all sounds fantastic, but highly improbable. Meeting a woman in a supermarket and going end up in the bar with her. And for me, not 4 days later, that's exactly what happened. I was in my local Tesco Express, and I met a woman. We got talking. She was a nurse, and we ended up in the pub. And as I was sitting there, I'm thinking, shit, Barry predicted all this. And she had like a scarf on, which was unusual because it was the middle of summer. It was literally like June, July, and she had a scarf on. And you're predicting that personality traits and everything. And I was like, wow. So that's just a little tidbit of some of the insight and accuracy and detail that Barry has given me. There's been loads more examples. I could sit here for the next half hour easily relaying some of the insights, which have been very accurate. Sorry. So that's awesome. I think that's a fantastic offer you've made, Barry. Thank you very much. I'm sure you'll be flying out like hotcakes. And so, do you have any final thoughts, Barry, before we wrap this up?
No, I'm pretty happy, pretty relaxed.
Okay. So we've already discussed the best way to contact you through the EmPowerU Facebook group page or on Facebook. If you've gotten value out of this interview, if you've enjoyed it, hit it up, some likes, some love. We welcome your feedback and your comments. And as I mentioned earlier, Barry has a website, www.beta, as in beta, beta-living.com. And you've also got another website which is kind of not quite finished, is that right? It's kind of under...
Yeah, it's in the making, mate. It has to be... when it gets published, mate, it has to be right. And unless I'm completely happy with it, then it's not going to go. So, but it will do. I'll send people the link on your page.
Barry, mate, it's been an absolute pleasure. I'm pleased you made yourself available to more people. I've enjoyed chatting with you, and awesome. I'll talk to you soon. We're just going to say bye for now.
See you, mate.